Hey everybody, welcome back to a Goat and a Fox Talk About Movies. I'm Daniel Goldhorn.
And I'm Reynard.
And today we went and saw, I saw today, Reynard saw yesterday, Quantumania, Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania, the newest Marvel movie. So, yesterday, Reynard, when you saw this movie, the very first thing you texted me when he got out of the movie was a 3-word text that said, "I want to die."
Yeah, in hindsight, if I had one wish, it would be that, if I could just... I don't know, I wish I had 2 more holes rather than eyes, so I didn't have to have seen this film.
It was an experience. For me personally, I think I need to make an apology to Thor Love and Thunder, because by God, I didn't think it was going to get much worse, and I guess Kevin Feige can keep on surprising me.
There's a silver lining there. I mean, doesn't make Love and Thunder any less embarrassing to witness, but...
At least I could tell what was happening in that movie. And at least, Christian Bale got to play an actual character.
Christian Bale was a lot of fun, though. Anytime, you get somebody scaring children, I'm down with that. It's fine.
There we go. And I guess for a little bit of context, because this is, a big thing and everything, when it comes to, the MCU, I was on board with the Marvel movies up through Endgame, even Far From Home, the Spider-Man movie that came out in 2019. That's not 20. Yeah, it came out in 2019, and it's I enjoyed it just fine, but I really fell off the bandwagon once they started putting out 4 movies a year and 6 series.
Yeah, I think I'm coming from a little bit more apathetic perspective in general. I don't care about... I mean, there've been good ones. I enjoyed the first Guardians is pretty good. I think that... I'm sure there are other ones that I like. I don't know. But I don't know. It's fine. They're a good... reliable. They're McDonald's. It's a product that you can enjoy, but now it's becoming I don't know, a failing. I don't know what where my analogy is going off the rails, but it's definitely meeting there's more problems now, or the problems are becoming more and more just apparent, essentially.
Yeah, and I feel like this is a movie because this is currently tied with Eternals with the lowest Rotten Tomatoes score. And obviously with Rotten Tomatoes, that's not the end-all be-all of movie criticism. But it is interesting to see that, critics are starting to turn on these movies more and more. And I feel like that's the general audience sentiment as well. I guess we'll see in a few weeks when we see how much money this ends up pulling in, because it made a lot of money this past weekend, but with this word of mouth, I don't know if we're going to see a very steep drop off. But among the more positive reviews, I saw this one, and I'm going to kind of bring this up through the rest of our discussion here, calling this Marvel's Star Wars. I was oh, this is very much like Star Wars. And I mean, which Star Wars? If Attack of the Clones, then yes.
It's Galaxy's Edge. It's what it is. When they go pull up to Bill Murray's cantina, and there's all the different creatures, and there's beep boop glor blacks and whatever. I'm I'm walking through a theme park right now, and I'm being shown different character actors that go home and bitch about their job, at the end of the day. It's fake world building and the false sense of a universe kind of just being thrown at us and being all right, here you go. Eat it up, you slobs.
Yeah, absolutely. It doesn't feel it doesn't feel very compelling. And it's like, you know, if you want to say this is Marvel Star Wars, then by all means, that's, you know, I'll take that on, and we'll see just how well that comparison works out. So I was thinking that what we'll do is we'll start with like some of the more technical aspects and kind of build up from there, because I feel like, quite frankly, like this movie doesn't really work on any level for me. And looking at like previous like infamous Marvel flops, you know, like Eternals at least had some good cinematography. Like when Chloe Zhao is allowed to actually hold the camera, she's really good, because of course she is. I made a whole video about that. She was, well, man, she was director. So I feel like, you know, they're like, okay, we have our little fight scenes. You can, you know, and now you get to decide how to frame this one shot here.
I like started laughing when I saw that Bill Pope was the DP on this movie, because like I could have been the cinematographer on this movie, and like it probably would have looked the same.
Yeah. I think you would have done a lot better. Like, don't sell yourself short, okay?
I don't know how to pull focus for shit.
I mean, here's the fun thing. You just hand it off to the digital artists. That's the great thing about this movie. You just, you know, everybody puts on like a green screen skin suit, and they deliver their lines, and then you just hand it off to someone else.
That is one thing that I do kind of want to like put out there, like early on. Like, we will probably be merrily trashing this movie, deservedly so, but like I do want to lay the blame at the feet of somebody other than like just the frontline VFX artists, because like we've all had insane deadlines we've had to meet in the past where it's like, here's the thing, I want it by tomorrow, and you're like, you could have a version of that, you know what I mean? Like, these are horrible looking unfinished movies, but like I don't think, you know, it's the fault of, you know, Joe, computer engineer, who's just trying to make it through the day.
Absolutely. And I feel like that's something that, you know, is very important to emphasize when we're having a discussion like this, because it's not the artist's fault. You know, it's very well documented, it's well reported at Disney and Marvel. You know, they really put a lot of crunch time on these people. They say, okay, we need, especially with this massive output they've been doing, they say, okay, we need 6 hours worth of footage of like computer animation on this and that and everything, and we need it done tomorrow, you know. And you can get that tomorrow. You're not gonna get a very good looking version of that.
It's like both shocking and not surprising at all to me that we're like 31 something movies in, and like they've known the process and that hasn't really changed, and yet they're still making the same exact mistakes of like always wanting like things to be redone or constantly changing their minds. And it's just like, you guys could like fix this problem. This is very doable, but you just, okay, I guess you just won't do better pre-production or something.
It's just, it is really sad just to kind of see that they're not interested in improving what they're making. They just want to make more of the same. You know, it's like, I wouldn't even mind if they would at least try to make it better. This is one of the worst looking Marvel movies I think we've seen yet.
It's
like,
so ugly.
The very first scene, we see like old lady Pym. She's in the quantum realm, and at first I thought, oh, she's in like a very close cavern, because there's like, you know, there's like swirls and everything above her. So like, okay, it's like cave walls. And then it shows her like running across a big field. I'm like, oh, okay. I can't even tell what I'm looking at. This is what we're going to be operating on for the rest of the movie.
Yeah, it's just very sort of like, I don't even know what to project. Like there's no, I don't know, singular vision behind all this. It looks the same as the quantum realm that we've seen in earlier films or whatever, but it's just kind of like assets that are just kind of like thrown together, and there's like some blobs and some tentacles and some like little like crystals or whatever, and it's just kind of, yep, there's some stuff that's just on the screen without any, I don't know, rhyme or reason to it.
Right, you know, like I have my little like notebook here. You can hear my notebook. And I wrote down in the middle of this movie, it looks very Strange World-esque.
Yeah, I had that thought too. I haven't seen the movie, but
I mean, you don't need to. And it just has this look of like, oh, all this like weird stuff happening, but it doesn't really have like a very cohesive feel to it. You know, like, you know, not to talk about, you know, Guillermo del Toro again, because I do that enough on my main channel, but you look at something like Hellboy 2, The Golden Army, where they go to like this big market, and there's all kinds of like weird, wacky designs everywhere, but there's still like a unifying feel to it. You know, like a united aesthetic.
right, you get the like, there's the kind of steampunk energy to the Golden Army, and then like the elves and whatnot have their kind of thing going on. Like there's a sense of like, I don't know, this is a thing that's been like developed, or like a culture, or like a, you know, society, whereas this is just like random ideas kind of thrown at the wall and then like just left.
Yeah, because it got like some like Rick and Morty vibes from like the weird blob thing. There's, I don't know, like an apple almost kind of feel to like the Kang Troopers. I don't know. I'm sure they have a name. I'm just gonna call them the Kang Troopers.
No, they like they finally like, this is like the apotheosis of the faceless Marvel villains. Like he just literally removed the face from them, and we're set. We're good to go. You can kill as many of them as you want.
There we
It's
go.
perfect.
Yeah. So, real quickly, so we'll go.
Mhm.
You know, we'll try to like generally move along with the plot as we, you know, go through our different points here. So, the movie opens. Ant-Man is still coasting off of his endgame heroics, which is very meta, I think. But his daughter is getting in trouble with the law because she wants to help people more directly, and she accuses him resting on his laurels after Endgame. And then it turns out she's been building like a quantum communicator with the old man Pym, and someone's like, oh, you get down here, and then they get sucked down into the quantum realm. They get split up, so you have Ant-Man and his daughter. They get thrown to like one side of the quantum realm, and then the Pyms, it's old man Pym, old lady Pym, and regular lady Pym get thrown to the other side.
Right.
And yeah, just the world feels so, to kind of come back to like that Star Wars comparison that people are making, and I feel like this is one of those things where it's just like, oh, it's a weird world, it's like Star Wars. One of the things that was really great with like, you know, Star Wars, I'm talking like 1977 Star Wars with no subtitles or anything, is that it still felt too grounded enough to feel real. You know, there's, you know, Aunt Bear we see her like cooking lunch in a kitchen, even though it's filled with like all kinds of weird appliances. You know, Uncle Owen, he's buying robots like it's a traveling vacuum salesman. Luke is playing with his toys in his room. And, you know, so it still feels like a real place that people live in, even though there's all kinds of weird, quirky stuff going on. And there's no grounding like that to the quantum realm. It doesn't feel like a real place.
Yeah, I guess like the closest you get is like Michelle Pfeiffer's like weird like quasi like Lawrence of Arabia shtick with like where she meets up with the old like, I don't know, like raiders that she is buddies with or something. But like again, that's still just like fake exposition.
It's just the thing that you need to get Bill Murray into your movie, and for a very horribly cut conversation. It's like
the editing.
God, the editing. Yeah, you want to talk about that next?
Can we?
It's like, oh my, yeah.
Can just address the elephant in the room.
the edit vent in the room.
Just no.
I'm sorry, you're already in enough pain as it is. But yeah, it's just like the editing in this movie felt so bad, like very noticeably bad. You know, first of all, it just feels like entire scenes are missing. So like, you know, after like, you know, everybody lands, they get tracked down by Kang. When Kang is introduced to Ant-Man, we don't actually see that. We just cut to Ant-Man suddenly in a prison, and then Kang is talking to him like they've been in each other's presence for a while now. And it's like, what?
Yeah, it's a little bit abrupt.
You know, later in the movie, spoilers, I guess. Later in the movie, there's like a big uprising, and they just do it. It's like, because there's these like freedom fighters and everything, and like, oh, we need to fight back against Kang, but we can't do it. And then Ant-Man's daughter is like, no, you gotta try. And that's enough to topple the entire regime.
I think that also, and we'll probably get into this later, that is, I don't know if that's necessarily, that's definitely a narrative problem. I think that's more the fact that, like, there are absolutely no stakes to the story at all. And I could not be brought to give a shit about any single character or plot beat in this. So I think that's a little bit different, but like definitely there's these like spotty little like, they're just kind of like running through bullet points rather than like connecting story beats to one another.
Yeah, it's like that thing. It's like we're kind of getting to a point where it's like this is one of those movies where trying to talk about one bad thing in it,
you know,
starts
they all
to bleed
like it's
into
this Ouroboros of like fucking garbage. But I think it honestly goes deeper. Like you've seen it more recently than me. My brain is like actively trying to like delete this as a coping mechanism, so I could be completely off base here. But it goes even simpler than like missing scenes. Like, for example, when they meet, they first like Cassie and Scott are first like accosted by the the refugees essentially. But like all of a sudden they're like separated, but I didn't even know they were separated. And like, wait, are they separated? I thought they were together when we last saw them. So there's like that kind of larger scale problem. But like even within a scene, like I remember several instances of my brain being confused and having to like kind of retroactively fit it. I think it happens at least 2 or 3 times. So like the last time, when they are like making their big like assault on Kang's like gyroscope palace or whatever the fuck that is, like Ant-Man is like big stompy man. He like goes and like tries to break through the force field, and like it doesn't work. And then all of a sudden, like, we know that Wasp is in the same area, but like all of a sudden, 1, Ant-Man is like small again. 2, Wasp is like right with him. And 3, they have like a plan. And then like, he like catapults through and like breaks the shield or whatever. But it's like, okay, so like in linear storytelling, we have either like action and reaction, or we have a sequence of actions that are tied logically together by images and sounds that we see. And there were several images and sounds that I was missing. Because like all of a sudden, like just we were in a new status, and I'm like, wait, were there 3 shots that just either they never filmed or they accidentally forgot to like put in the edit, or like it just felt so much more like incompetent than even just like we forgot a scene. Like it's like we didn't even film a complete like sequence.
Yeah, it was like, well, for the climax thing, I think by that point my brain had just kind of like tuned out everything for like self-defense. Like at that point I was just kind of like, okay, you win, movie, just please stop hurting me.
Strategic retreat.
But for what you were saying before, like, so with the village, like, yes, so when like the first land, they get like caught by the villagers, like the quantum people. They get dragged to the village, and so they get captured together, and then they get to the village.
Cassie's drinking the ooze already somehow.
Yeah, the daughter gets there, tells him to drink the ooze, and then it'll cut away to something else with the Pym family, And then it cuts back to him getting dragged forward, and he's force-fed the ooze, which is made by this one guy. Again, he reminds me like a Rick and Morty character, which makes him able to understand everyone. And I feel like that was a thing that's really dampened the world building for me, because when you couldn't understand everything, it was like, oh, this is kind of like a little bit more exciting, you know? It's like a little bit more alien, you know, more like quantum realm. And then once they start speaking English, it's all like one-liners and Marvel dialogue and wonderful.
I mean, like, I was fine with them, like, speaking English and having, like, a conceit to do it. Like, the dialogue itself is obviously, like, you know, leaves something to be desired. But I guess, like, having a reason, like, to have them understand now was okay. I don't like the ooze. I don't like the Holes character. I don't like the Holes arc. I want that deleted. But, like, I was okay with him having a way for them to understand English or whatever quantum speak.
One thing that is weird about this, and in the grand scheme of things, is like a small-ish thing, to be fair. But so we go through the whole thing with the Blob, who's obsessed with people's holes, which again, wonderful addition to the cinematic experience.
I will say, and this, I can't believe I'm fucking saying this right now, but that was the one beat where I remembered that Paul Rudd was a comedic actor, because they're like, God, what's his name? William Jackson Harper's character is like, you have 7 holes, and then like there's like this beat where like Paul Rudd is like internally counting, and it's like, that's the kind of comedy timing that's like actually funny. Like, the joke is stupid, but he's executing it competently. And it was like this one like little shining moment where it's like, oh, that's right, he can be funny sometimes in other movies.
You know, and this movie really lacks a lot of the stuff that I liked even in the previous Ant-Man movies. Like, I'll say this, like, I enjoyed Ant-Man and the Wasp, like, fine.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like a big part of what made the Ant-Man movies at least stand out a little bit was the whole, like, shrinking and growing shtick, you know, where it's like, oh, you know, it's really small in the kitchen, and there's deadly things in the kitchen that are normal when you're human sized, but they're deadly when you're Ant-Man sized.
Right, they
You
could
know,
like
it's-
gimmickify it, or even with like having the different kinds of ants in the first one to like pull off their like heist flick. Like, you could like, you had like a different kind of set of tools you could play with, essentially, that are not present here in the least.
Right. It feels like they're taking what little deviations they managed, and they're already very homogenized franchise, and they're sanding off those edges.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, come on, guys, you're going in the opposite direction of what we want. Oh my god.
It's all gonna just become like this like sort of weird like quasi psychedelic just green screen festival. It's just all slowly marching in that direction.
Like, eventually it's literally just going to be somebody on a green screen going like, whoa, and then they're gonna AI generate colors in the background, and that's gonna be Doctor Strange 47.
Or someone else is so proud.
Oh, we need to talk about the best thing in the movie.
When it ended?
Okay, the second best thing in the movie, MODOK.
God. You know, I knew MODOK was coming. I did not know that a shot of MODOK's like goopy ass was coming, because I was not prepared for that to happen.
Oh, hold on a second. Alright, sorry about that.
No.
So, where were we?
MODOK. I think that was divine intervention, honestly.
Oh
Let's
no!
talk about MODOK.
No god can save you from MODOK.
I don't want to do it.
The MODOK was my favorite.
Is there going to
part
be a
of the
sequel
movie.
that we don't talk about Bruno? That's fucking Disney will come out the Oscars and like parade him around. And...
I hope they do a MODOK bit at the Oscars. I really hope they do.
I really hope they don't. If they do, I'm gonna... I don't know what I'm gonna do. I'm already at the end of my rope.
Oh, I remember that. So he specifically left off with talking about the soggy ass MODOK.
So this is all staying in. I don't know.
It's staying in. But yeah, it's like
yeah, MODOK. God damn. Yeah, what the fuck is going on?
So when I saw in the theater, it was at like a fairly early showing, so it was only me and one other guy in there, and I kind of feel bad, but I still did it anyways. Every time MODOK's face appeared on the screen, I laughed out loud.
It's like the Uncanny Valley is like, that's like the poster child for just God. I mean, David Cronenberg could come with something that terrifying.
Speaking of Cronenberg, remember when we were going to talk about
Infinity Pool? Do you want to talk about Infinity Pool? Can we just talk about Infinity Pool instead? I want to talk about Crimes of the Future, man. That's like less terrifying than this shit.
My God. But yeah, it's like, you know, for all of you listening, I'm sure you've probably heard by now that MODOK looks really bad if you haven't seen it yourself. He looks every bit as bad as you've heard. Legitimately, it looks like Robert Rodriguez doing one of his kids' movies in the early 2000s.
I legitimately started to wonder if like somebody in VFX has like a vendetta against Corey Stoll, and it's like, oh, I'm gonna fuck this guy over so good. I'm gonna make him look like a mashed potato. Like
it never looked good. It never looked. And here's the thing, like VFX never have to be like they don't have to be realistic. They have to be at least convincing.
Sure,
have to be enough, you know. And this kind of ties in with the narrative, because it's like, if an effect is kind of weird, but I'm invested enough in the story, I'm like, okay, I can kind of just push that aside, and I can buy it.
Was he supposed to be a threat or not?
That's the thing. So, like, I feel like he was supposed to, because like when he's presented, he like kills a whole bunch of like the rebels and everything, but then he's also kind of like the butt monkey. Like Kang, kind of throws him around a little bit. Scott keeps cutting off his little speeches, and at the end, he tries to redeem himself. He's like, "I'm an Avenger now. I'm not a dick."
He has the fastest redemption arc of all time. I mean, like everything else in the movie, it's just I couldn't quite tell what like tonally I was supposed to be. Is he like genuinely scary? Is he like does he view himself as a threat, and that's why he's got his like big old like helm on and everything, but he's actually just a big old doofus? Like, I mean, I know that Marvel are kind of like allergic to sincerity, so they always have to kind of like comment on themselves before anyone else can, even though Twitter exists. But like it was so hard to tell, because like Kang is like very much like the Marvel bad guy, but like I'm like, okay, are you like supposed to be serious, or are you not supposed to be serious, or like what am I supposed to take away from this?
Really, I think when it comes down to it, it's not about whether he's serious or comedic, because in the end, all that matters is that he's MODOK.
What is comedy?
Comedy is subjective,
Dad.
But MODOK is pure and absolute.
There we go. Gonna move away from the metric system to the MODOK system.
There we go. It's instead of you don't measure things in yards or meters. You measure things in homicides. I don't know where I'm going with this. I think I'm done talking about MODOK now.
Thank you.
So, anyway, so Ant-Man, his daughter, brought to Kang, and he needs them to get a core that old lady Pym had ruined years ago. And there's a scene like Ant-Man has to go into this probability storm, and there's lots of alternate versions of himself based on his choices. And I'm just gonna say it, and I feel like this kind of goes for everything else happens in this movie. Everything Everywhere All at Once did everything this movie tries to do 1,000 times better.
Well, there's a spicy take.
It's and I think it was at this point when, like, because then Lady Pym, the Wasp, like, comes to meet him, and there's like 1,000,000 Ant-Men and 1,000,000 Wasps, and all get like swirled up into this vortex.
God, I was getting like World War Z, like PTSD from that. It looked so stupid.
God, it just looks so bad. It doesn't look convincing. Because you're watching this, and you don't think like, oh, I'm watching Ant-Man climb over thousands of himself. You're looking at this and you're thinking, I'm watching a lot of CGI artists get horribly abused.
Yeah, it was a hot mess.
So after that, Kang begins his plan. And I think this will be kind of our hottest take, because I know that we're kind of in agreement on this in our pre-recording talks. I don't think Jonathan Majors as Kang is everything people are drumming it up to be.
No, like, I went in, like, you know, reading the little, like, I don't know, just, like, I don't really read reviews or anything, but, like, skimming over, like, blurbs or whatever, it's like, okay, well, at least I'll have something to latch on to, and, like, Jonathan Majors is a good actor. Like, he's great in, like, I don't know, like, Last Black Man in San Francisco is really good. He's probably one of the better parts of Lovecraft Country, I would say, etc. But, like, so it's like, okay, well, I'll have something to latch onto. And they've had, you know, a decent, like, Tony Leung is as good as a Marvel villain as we're going to get. And Tony Leung is one of the great actors of his generation and stuff. So, like, okay, like, they've got, like, precedent, I guess, for, like, kind of rehabilitating the, like, Marvel villain, like, stereotype of, like, they're just man that wants thing. But Kang was, like, the marveliest of the Marvel villains for me.
Yeah, because it's like, what, he wants to...
He's Kang, man.
He wants to save the multiverse by killing a lot of the things in the multiverse. And it's like, oh, gee, where have we seen this before in this franchise?
Well, and that was the thing, was, like, you know, I mentioned earlier that, like, I didn't care about any of the characters, and I had no, like, personal stake in anything that was going on. And, like, this is kind of like you're saying, like, with Thanos and everything, like, wiping out half of existence is pretty broad and severe and dramatic. But, like, we also had personal connections to it, because we, like, you know, you saw some of the, like, Avengers get dusted or whatever, and, like, there was, like, clear consequences, whereas, like, here, when, like, Michelle Pfeiffer, like, touches the space chair and, like, kind of taps into his consciousness, and, like, it's literally, like, this, like, operatic genocide, like, that is on scales that are completely unthinkable, is, like, represented by, like, lines getting, like, erased and, like, little, like, dusty planets. And I'm like, I don't care. Like, this doesn't matter to me.
Well, it's also represented by a laser shooting out of his mouth, so...
Oh, true. That it was pretty compelling. I also noticed, like, whenever he was, like, lasering people, they just kind of, like, their asset, like, disappeared from the screen. Like, it was the least compelling way you could kill something. It's just like, oh, they're just gone now. They don't even have a little, like, puff of anything. It's just like, doop! Like, okay, that's emotional.
I literally put down in my notebook, because, like, you know, at the big finale when he's fighting people, because he stops using that power when he's fighting the protagonists, the named characters of the movie. I was like, why isn't he using his Control X power on them?
Because they have, like, titles above the, you know, names above the title, and some of them don't like vaccines and stuff, and they're important, okay?
They have a power greater than anything Kang could possibly harness. A multi-film contract.
God.
I will say, because like, again, I had mentioned like Thor: Love and Thunder, and the one thing that I think puts that movie above Quantumania for me is Christian Bale's gore. And this isn't just the fact that, because again, like Jonathan Majors, he's giving a good performance.
I mean,
but not
for what he's like given material-wise.
For what he's given, like he's doing alright, but he isn't like, you know, like with the Christian Bale, I felt like he was like putting so much into that, way more than that movie deserved. But also he just had like better writing, like, you know, with Kang, he's
King.
His motivation is that like other versions of himself are getting out of line, so it's like, oh, I have to stop other versions of myself from causing trouble, which could be interesting. They didn't make it interesting in this movie. Maybe they made it interesting in the Loki series because that was his introduction.
Loki.
I'm not watching Loki either. I watched Falcon and the Winter Soldier, and that was already more than enough for me. And with Gore, it's like he lost his people, he lost his daughter because he pledged himself to a god, and the god laughs in his face. So he's like, you know what? Gods suck. I'm gonna kill them all. And that's effective, that's powerful, and I wish the movie had done more with that.
Well, and he's just also just really creepy. Like,
right.
Just his presence is really disturbing in a way that like a lot of these other characters have not been, which was interesting and like gave me something to work with. Whereas Kang is Kang, and that's kind of all I have to go off with this character.
Right. Because I know a lot of people are like, oh my god, Kang, he's such a big deal in the comics. And it's like, great. I don't read comics. Movies are my little circle.
Yeah, and it's like, okay, if you're going to make these films and you're gonna, like, it's already obvious that, like, if you're gonna really fully be all in on this, you have to have seen all of the various products and whatnot, which, you know, I know you're not, I know I'm not, so we're a little bit in the out group there, but, like, okay, if you're gonna cater to, like, comic fans, that's great, but, like, as a film, it's not working because you are fundamentally not providing enough information or enough, like, material to give us a complete story. You know, it's just like relying on other, oh, well, you've seen that, and even that whole thing about like, this is episode 1 of the next arc. It's like that's not what movies are. That's not how this works.
Right. I know we were talking about that tweet where it's like, oh, you can't judge this like a movie. You have to judge this as episode 1 of a new series. You know? It's like saying, you know, you sit down, you have a cheeseburger, like, oh, this tastes awful. And someone says, well, you can't judge it like a cheeseburger. You have to judge it like a cheesecake.
Like, oh. I hope.
It's like,
please never make a cheesecake in that case.
Yeah, so it is so, because when it comes down to it, even if you look at it, you know, as just, you know, to like the very core of it, because nothing really happens in this movie, it feels like, in terms of the characters progressing. I feel like the most we get is that Ant-Man learns from his daughter that he has to fight for good, which he's done in several movies already.
Yep.
And also, like, as you know, just as kind of a quick aside here, talking about his daughter, I didn't buy a single one of her line deliveries in this movie.
Oh, God. Honestly, the luckiest person in this entire situation is that poor woman that got recast as Cassie after Endgame. She's coming out smelling like roses, man.
Yeah.
She's not involved in any of this.
And everything. So, right before we started recording, another friend of mine, he sent me this interesting thing. So the person who played Ant-Man's daughter in this movie, that we're talking about, like, oh, like, we didn't buy any of her performance, she was also in Lady Bird.
Was she?
She's like, okay, so like in Lady Bird, when the main character and her best friend, like, they split up, her best friend gets like a new friend, and that's her.
When Beanie Feldstein's character?
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
okay. I mean, I guess that goes to show that Greta Gerwig is a far better director than fucking Peyton Reed.
Yeah, as a Greta Gerwig, she knows how to make a good movie, okay? And here's the thing. So again, this comes down to just like with the storytelling being so fundamentally broken. So in the final fight, we're down to like a fist fight because of course we are. The camera's shaking all over the place because of course it is. And Kang is like yelling at Ant-Man like, you should have looked the other way. You could have gone home. You could have seen your daughter again. But that's never what he offers Ant-Man. Like, he captures him and says, oh, if you do this thing for me, then you will see your daughter. Then I'll give you back your daughter. And then Ant-Man does the thing for him. And then Kang betrays him because he's the bad guy. All of the stuff is what he offered old lady Pym to fix his engine and then be like, oh, I won't hurt your world, but I'm going to go do my thing and keep destroying other universes. So, like, why is he saying this to Ant-Man when he didn't offer this to Ant-Man? This is such like a fundamentally broken narrative.
I think what we need to do is take a step back and realize that maybe this is like actually a Charlie Kaufman project, and it's like an existentialist like dive into how nothing matters and narratives are flawed and we should just give up.
You joke, but people are actually going to argue that. They're going to argue that.
I hate everything.
Cinema is dead. That is the lesson of Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania.
I have more dreadful news to share. I've been scrolling through the IMDb page, and there's some poor soul that had to play the on-set MODOK.
No.
I really need, like, set photos or something of this.
Did they have, like, a giant...
I don't know, man. I don't know. I'm just telling you what I know. I need this.
Please, like, if anybody has access to this, please send it to us.
Please.
The email is on our channel page. But yeah, so, Reynard, would you recommend Ant-Man and the Wasp, Quantum Wasp?
I would recommend Quantum of Solace, because that's what I needed after this.
I would also not recommend this. I would recommend, if you haven't seen it yet for whatever reason, Puss in Boots is still in theaters. And it continues to be the best action movie in theaters right now.
I mean, I hear 80 for Brady is a pretty raucous final scene.
Well, in other news, but yeah, thank you so much for joining me today, Reynard.
Thank you. It's not the right appropriate term, but okay.
And in a couple of weeks, look forward to us talking about the upcoming Oscars and the Best Picture nominations. We're looking forward to that.
It's gonna be really weird talking about movies that I don't like abjectly hate on this channel so far.
You know, it's
gonna be a great change. Honestly, I'm ready.
You know, we'll get. We got to get that balance in there. You know, we gotta.
There we go. 2 for not me, 1 for me.
Well, hey, thank you so much. Have a good evening, and thank you so much for everybody who's been listening in. Feel free to hit the like button, subscribe. You can follow Reynard on /cinema at Tumblr, and me, Daniel Goldhorn, at Daniel Goldhorn on YouTube. And have a great day.
Thank you.